With October 20th fast approaching, the race for municipal office across Alberta is heating up. From every corner of this great province, candidates for mayor, reeve, and yes, even councillor are stepping forward with ideas for stronger communities, smarter growth, and brighter futures. In this edition of the show, we turn our attention to the city of Lethbridge, Alberta, where we have the honor to sit down and chat with council candidate Jenn Schmidt-Rempel. Jenn, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about your re-election bid for the City of Lethbridge Council and also yourself. It is always a great time whenever I chat with you for any part of our show. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this.
Well, thank you very much for having me again today, Chris. I always enjoy your show and I always appreciate our conversations. So thank you.
So let's jump right into it. You have decided, and your name is going to be on the ballot on October 20th for re-election for Lethbridge City Council. Take me
Yep.
through the process of making up that decision to spend another 4 years on council.
Um, it comes down to there's still work that I want to be doing. Um, we've achieved um, we've achieved some good work over the past 4 years. So we've increased access to housing and childcare. Doctors are choosing to locate in Lethbridge, and the Southern Alberta Medical Program has started and is kicking off, and they're going to be training the next generations of doctors right here in Lethbridge. Our encampment strategy is connecting our most vulnerable to the services that they need. Our police services is accountable and they're funded properly. So we're seeing some good improvements there. There's been growth in local industry and in business, which is increasing job opportunities here in Lethbridge. And there's new investment in our water and wastewater infrastructure. And we've also implemented a financial framework that's going to keep Lethbridge responsible and keep our services stable as we move into the future. So we've achieved those things over the past 4 years. But for me, there's still work to be done, and we've got some good momentum going, and I want to continue that. So expanding housing across the full continuum, that's work that we need to be doing. Still growing childcare and increasing youth supports and programming. That's another thing I want to be working on. Building safe, healthy, and accessible neighborhoods. That comes down to what our rezoning will look like, and working through that land use bylaw, but also making sure that what we're doing fits for neighborhoods and fits for the residents that live in those neighborhoods. We need to make sure that we're protecting our water supply, but we're also growing that critical infrastructure. So one thing people know here in Lethbridge is that we need investment into water and wastewater infrastructure. And as I stated, we've seen some good investment over the past 4 years, but we need to keep up that advocacy and we need to keep up that work, because without the investment in that critical infrastructure, we won't see growth or investment moving forward, right? Like it needs to come together. And then we also need to make sure we're strengthening our workforce, supporting local businesses, but also attracting new investments to grow those employment opportunities. So it's sort of building on the 4 years that I've just completed and what my vision for the next 4 years is. And that's to make sure that we've got a future ready Lethbridge and that we're growing into the future. So what do we look like 10, 15, 20, 25 years from now? And what do we want Lethbridge to look like?
So you talked about some very big macro challenges that the city is facing and the city has faced with this last 4 years. I'm going to ask a very specific question, and I apologize, but
No,
how
all good.
has your time on council helped shape the advocacy work that has been happening on council? Because many people will be going, okay, they know that the mayor's role is the mayor's role, the councilor's role is the councilor's role, but for you, what did you see your role in the last 4 years in helping move those files forward? What did you contribute? Because a lot of people will say, okay, this is a job interview and we want to know what you
Yeah.
have officially done. So what have you done to help move those files forward?
So I can speak to some, but I will direct people to my website, jenschmidtrempel.ca, because there is a full, I think it's 7-page document on there that lists out sort of that report card as well as what I want to do moving forward. But so I will direct people to that. But in sort of overarching terms, As far as childcare goes, I initiated and instigated the childcare study that went on in Lethbridge and identified that we were 600 spaces short here in Lethbridge for childcare. And that has seen now some investment from private industry as well as public in increasing our childcare spaces. And childcare is a huge economic driver. A lot of people don't think about it as that, but it's a massive economic driver. I was hearing that people couldn't get to their classes at the university or college to increase their job skills or to do English language learning. So we were losing people in the workforce that way. People couldn't get to jobs because they didn't have adequate childcare. So that's an economic investment in our community. So driving that forward, and we're starting to see now some growth in that area. We have a new childcare facility on the west side that's going to be 120 spaces, and that operator is going to be operating 24/7, 365, specifically to address shift work needs, right? That's huge. That's new to Lethbridge, but that was identified through that 600 space deficiency that we had. The Southern Alberta Medical Program, it was underway. Advocacy for that was underway when I got on council. But when I got on council, I certainly took post-secondary advocacy and particularly around the Southern Alberta Medical Program on as something that I could advocate for every time I was talking to somebody in the province. So I did that, moving that forward, and we got that secured over this past term. The encampment strategy is something that I've worked on with our staff. I know it sometimes our staff will say, and I've been in public presentations where they say, it felt like we were at odds when we were doing this, that you didn't support us. But now they're coming around to saying, no, you did support us, and we see what you were doing when you were going out and collecting the information from residents, from other partner organizations and bringing it back to us, because now our encampment strategy is just that much better. And I brought that information from the community to our staff to say, here's where we're seeing gaps. Here's where people who are currently participating in the process of allocating funds or offering supports, here are the gaps they're seeing and what we need to do. So it experienced some growing pains for sure, but we didn't have an encampment strategy 4 years ago. And now we have a very robust one that is connecting people to the services that they need. I sat on the police commission over these past 4 years and worked hard with the police commission to get their strategy going, and as well as making sure that our police services were advocated for and properly funded. And that's now we're seeing some really good results of that. Our downtown businesses are happy with what they're seeing from our local police services, as well as the crime reduction stats that we're seeing, and our CSI stats are reducing. So we're seeing some better reporting on that overall. The other thing I brought forward and brought to council's awareness was the post-secondary retention study. So that was with our post-secondary as well as other regional partners on what we need to do to retain post-secondary students here in our region, and make Lethbridge and our region more attractive for them to stay. So they're not moving out to Toronto, to Calgary, to Vancouver, but what do we need to do to keep them here? So I brought that study forward, and now there are specific things that we can pull from that study, as well as our childcare study and then our community well-being study that we did. There are common themes throughout all of those, including things like childcare, transit, public safety. We can start moving forward on those things, and those 3 studies I want to pull together as well over the next term and start making motions and building on those common themes.
Those are very, sorry, I'm just going to interrupt here
No,
for
go
a second
ahead.
because those are very big macro issues that we're talking about. Childcare,
Yeah.
housing, infrastructure, safety, crime. Those are very big macro. Looking at the micro, and I say micro in the sense the individual issues, the one that you hear at the grocery store, the one that you hear when you're out with your partner or you're out just going at an event and people walk up to you and say, Jen, we have an issue that we want to challenge. How have you been accessible over the last 4 years to the people of Lethbridge? Because people want people to listen to them. And as
Yeah.
I've often heard on this show and many other times and many other shows that I've been on and listened to, counselors have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and they should listen twice as more as they talk.
Absolutely.
have you been a good listener to the micro issues and championing those issues as well on your time in council?
Yeah, so one of the stories that comes up, so I am out there, I am in the community, I am out at as
She is.
many events as I
I
possibly
will
can
admit
be.
that she is out there.
Yep, yeah, I'm accessible. My website stays up so people can email me at jen.jenschmidtrempel.ca. I am across like all the social media platforms, so LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram, and people contact me through that. And I am out there listening, and you're right. Like the biggest part of this job is making sure people are heard. Whether you come to an agreement or not, it's making sure people are heard. So one of the stories that's come up recently that I'd actually forgotten about, but somebody reminded me of this during the election, was when we were bringing our transit passes forward. So our low-income transit passes and our fee accessibility transit passes forward. And we'd set it up for newcomers as well as low-income residents. So we got that through. But I was contacted by one of the individuals who was working with the Ukrainian evacuees coming to Lethbridge. And he contacted me and said, Jen, we need to do something for the evacuees. They need access to transit so they can get to their doctor's appointments, so they can get to Service Canada, so that they can get everything that they need to lined up. And I was like, we made that motion, and I totally didn't think that the Ukrainian evacuees were here under a different permit than other newcomers. So what I did was I backed that up. I took it back to council the next meeting, got it on the agenda, and got the Ukrainian evacuees added to that, right? Because that's important. And we got unanimous support from council, right? And it was something that I totally had missed. It was on my radar being part of the task force for the premier, but it was something that I thought was covered under the newcomers. But because they came under a different permit, we needed to specify that in our policies. So that was something on that micro level that we got working on really quickly. We got it through council, and we got access to our Ukrainian evacuees so that they could access the services that they need. One of the other ones is that housing and homelessness, and really supporting those infrastructure projects and supporting the zoning as they come forward to council. So we've done a good job of making sure that we are looking at housing and housing accessibility across the continuum, whether it's affordable, whether it's transitional. We're making sure that we are looking at those and approving the zoning around those so that people can get access to the housing that they need, as well as looking at what market housing opportunities there are.
I want to turn to the issues because I'm assuming most people will want to talk about that when you're at the doorsteps. Now, you've outlined what you want to see done in the next 4 years and what you want to continue working on over the next 4 years. But the role of the
Hmm.
counselor, as you've just said, is to also listen and to also
Hmm.
advocate for the issues that people bring to you. Now, I know this is still early days from when the official nomination period has closed, and we're officially in the campaign period now. What are residents of Lethbridge telling you as the potential next counselor that they want to see addressed in the next 4 years?
Um, the big issues that are coming up are around housing and homelessness. They're around that safety and social disorder. There's concerns there. They're around workforce development and employment here in the city. So what can we be doing to help our current businesses as well as attract new investment? And they're also around affordability. And affordability is a difficult one to address, other than looking at what we can be doing for our city taxes and making sure that we are as responsible as possible with the taxpayers' money. So those are the
Can I
big
jump
things
in
that
there
I'm
for a
talking.
second because you just said something that
Sure.
I need to follow up on.
Yep.
Do you think the last 4 years you have been responsible with the taxpayer dollar?
Yes. Yeah. And we have put some policies in place over these past 4 years as well to make sure that we are even more financially responsible as we go forward. So we've got a long-term fiscal framework that's going to entrench all of our policies under one umbrella to make sure they're all working together. So that's one thing. We are making sure that when we're doing fee for service agreements, we've got a list of things we want people to make, or those groups to make sure that they are following. So we've moved forward in our fiscal responsibility a great deal over these past 4 years, and I'm proud of the work that council has done around that, recognizing that those are priorities.
Affordability is a big, very huge issue
Yeah,
that I'm
it's a
hearing,
tough
not
one.
just in Lethbridge, but across Alberta right now. You talk about houselessness, you talk about affordable housing, you talk about transitional housing. Most people would say that's a lot of money we're going to be spending to address those issues. How do
Mhm.
you balance that into 2025? And how do you see yourself in the next term of office ensuring that we move forward on these key critical issues around housing? Because every time I go down to Lethbridge, I always see it growing. It's not like it's
Mhm.
stopping growing anytime soon. So how do you ensure the growth of your community continues with the reality of we need to be fiscally responsible and we can't just spend hand over fist to ensure that we continue to keep up with the infrastructure because we look at the future, but the people are struggling today. How do you see your role
Yeah.
in balancing that?
There's so many layers to that one, right? There's just so many economic development layers on that one, and one thing relies on the next, on the next, on the next. Um, so so when we talk about housing specifically, we need to make sure we are growing our city in a responsible manner. We know that growing up and not out can can be more responsible that way, right? So we need to make sure that we're making use of and growing our current neighborhoods with our current infrastructure, because that reduces costs on the taxpayer, right? So making sure that we are doing responsible infill, making sure that we are fulfilling the housing needs that people are expecting and looking for. So it does mean growing and improving zoning for more multifamily in different neighborhoods. But again, making sure that we're not putting pressure on infrastructure, critical infrastructure where we might run into issues. So it's that, but it's also workforce development, as well as business support and business attraction. So what are we going to do insofar as attracting new business to our city, but also making sure that our current businesses can grow and expand, right? So making sure that we're doing all of those things. So it is layer upon layer upon layer. There's a lot of things at work there. Um,
Do,
Again,
do
making
you think
sure.
the city has a good handle on it right now? And in the next 4 years, you're going to be able to expand on that work that has been done? Because you talk about what you want to see accomplished. If affordability in housing and affordable housing is something that people are talking about, I'm assuming this is going to be taking up much of your next 4 years if you're reelected. Do you think the city has a good handle on how this is going to roll out? Knowing the fact, and I'm going to preface it for those who are listening right now, Jenn will be one member of a team of people around a council table making a decision.
Mhm.
She does not unilaterally get to decide we're going to change all this. And as much as people may think that happens, it does not. She is one council member on a team of council, as a team of the team of council. So, in your role, do you think that the council will be able to address these issues in a way that will make people feel like their monies are being spent wisely, but we're also fixing the challenges that we're faced with right now?
I do. I've seen us do some work over these past 4 years to move us forward in there. So, working on our commercial and industrial land banking strategy, really taking a hard look at that. What does that look like? Growing our regional partnerships. So making sure that we are building that and recognizing that what's good for the region is also good for the city, and what's good for the city is also good for the region. So, we recognize those are things we need to work on. And then also, taking a look at our overarching land use bylaw. So we're rewriting and reviewing that right now. We all know what we need to be doing there, but also making sure we recognize we have to be responsible with that development. And we also have to focus on critical infrastructure needs. We want to make sure that our infrastructure is being prioritized, because it doesn't matter how much we grow. If you can't flush the toilets and you can't turn on the taps, nothing else matters, right? Residents need to see that critical infrastructure being taken care of first. So we all have, this current council anyway, all really has a good understanding of those are the things we need to prioritize and those are the things we need to take care of. Also recognizing growing, developing our workforce, and what we can do to build Lethbridge into the future. But the critical infrastructure has to be part of that. And it's not the sexy stuff, that's for sure.
What? It is to me. Like, this is the stuff that I literally do
Yeah,
episodes of my
a
show
lot,
on, Jen.
a lot of people aren't super excited about water and wastewater. Why do I care about that? Well, you will when you can't flush your toilet or turn on the tap.
I want to turn to the houselessness challenge that we're faced with
Mhm.
right now as a whole. And with that, and I hate to paint a broad stroke, but it often gets lumped in side by side. Mental health and addiction, crime and safety, encampments. It is a very big macro sort of umbrella that I'm going to talk about here. Now, traditionally, and I'm going to say this in the nicest way possible, municipalities are not set up to deal with these type of challenges, with
Right.
encampments, with mental health and addiction. Traditionally, this is a provincial issue. But more and
Mhm.
more municipalities are dealing with it because if you don't deal with it, I'm assuming you will hear from your residents, why aren't you doing anything about it? Now, this is a very touchy subject, and I want to make sure I do this with all respect. How do we fix this problem knowing that the province isn't going to come in and rescue municipalities tomorrow?
It's a long-term solution, right? We have to be looking to the future and what we want to be doing. 4 years ago, Lethbridge didn't have an encampment strategy. And it was within months of getting elected that we all started getting phone calls about our unhoused population during the winter time. And we did not have a strategy in place, something that should have been worked on um, years ago, right? Let's be honest, we've seen this coming for a long time. The province has been cutting back mental health supports for as long as I can remember. My mom worked in mental health. And I remember growing up hearing about the provincial cuts. Was she going to have a job? What was that going to look like going forward? So this is a problem that has been in the works for years. The municipality, so Lethbridge decided we needed to step up and play a role. There was a lot of discussion around the council table. There were councillors who were concerned about us stepping up to play this role because it was infringing in the provincial lane. Now, I will acknowledge that in talking with some provincial officials, they do have work that they're working on, and some have reached out and would like to come down and visit with me and do some hear and learn more about some of the advocacy work that I do learning right here in our community. And if I'm reelected, I'll certainly be inviting them down and setting up those meetings with them. But going back to it, Lethbridge has invested in this. We've built our encampment strategy. It is coordinated through different organizations. So we have an outreach team, we have our community social development team, and we have our Lethbridge Police Services. And we have different levels of encampment response, so different tiers that people can call in through our 311 service. And depending on the tier will depend on who comes out to engage with the vulnerable sector that's there, to connect them to the services that they need. So it is a coordinated response, and it's working quite well. Over the past year, we've seen 20 people move from unhoused into a housing situation. That's it doesn't seem like a big number, but it is, right?
That's
And
huge.
and we're going to keep working on that. Over the next term, I would like to sit down and chat with our staff to see what are our next steps. We need to work with Lethbridge Police Services. What are our next steps, and work with that whole coordinated response to see, are the coordinated efforts sort of the tasks in the right area? Do they need to be shuffled around? And what does that look like? And then talk about what advocacy work we need to be doing with the province and with the feds to get funding back into Lethbridge to help people with these issues.
You talk about the stakeholders that are also a part of this the challenge that we have to
Yep.
address here. How do you see your role as counselor being that conduit between the stakeholders and council? Because it seems like this is a passion of yours, and I apologize if I'm putting words
Yep.
in your
No,
mouth,
that's
but
okay.
it seems like this is something that you want to see get accomplished, which is great. How do you see
Yeah.
your role as counselor bringing all this groups in to ensure that this is not just a municipal issue that's going to be fixed, it's going to be a entire city issue that's going to be fixed, and that means partners with the police service, that means partners with the local nonprofit organizations who help out on a regular basis around encampments and houselessness. How do you see yourself bringing the province in? And you talked about bringing them down, but looking back on the last 4 years, what did you see as your role to ensure that everyone was at the table and it wasn't just a council decision?
So, really, it was listening. Again, it goes back to hearing what people have to say. And then it was bringing the concerns of the stakeholders back to the city to hear that and bringing that information back to the city and our staff to understand where there were gaps and where things maybe needed to be adjusted. And then connecting our city staff with those different community organizations to have those conversations, right? And so it's being that bridging partner, bringing the information to, relaying it back, but also making sure that people have and are talking to each other.
I was just recently down in Lethbridge a few months ago and I was having a conversation. I do know people outside you, Jen, in Lethbridge, so don't hold
What?
it again.
How
I
did
know.
that happen?
I know. It's like I know people. But the one thing I heard over and over again from the group of people I was chatting with, because it was a little bit of a meet and greet and a coffee that I was having with some people, was crime and safety.
Mhm.
And this is not something I'm assuming you probably are not aware of, but these people just did not feel safe sometimes going downtown or leaving
Mhm.
their car unlocked like they used to 20 years ago. How do you see addressing the safety issue within the city of Lethbridge? Because I say this knowing the fact that every time I've gone to Lethbridge, I've never felt not safe. And I know I'm a bigger
Mhm.
guy. I'm pushing 350. I'm 6'2". People are just not going to come up to me like they may other people. So how do you make the city of Lethbridge feel safe for everyone, knowing that sometimes it can be what's the word I'm looking for here without using the word I want to use? It can be individualized because safety for
Yeah.
me could be different for you. So how do you make the city of Lethbridge feel safe? And I'm going to preface this by saying, do you feel safe in Lethbridge?
I do feel safe in Lethbridge, 100%. Yeah, no, I feel safe in Lethbridge, but that's not everybody's perception, and I certainly appreciate that. I have an aunt and uncle who won't come downtown because they've heard it's not safe, right? And that's their perception. All I can do is work on the fact that, telling people that I feel safe in Lethbridge, and that they should too. The past 4 years have seen some huge changes in that area, and it's something it's something we as residents of Lethbridge really need to communicate with people, that our community is a safe community, and we have seen those improvements over the past 4 years. Our Lethbridge Police Services, I am so proud of the work that they have done, and maybe I'm biased because I sit on the commission, but I am very proud of the work that our police services has done. They are fully staffed, so council made sure that they had the funds that they needed to do the work that we were asking them to do. They are now fully staffed. Our downtown policing unit is fully staffed. And they're doing the work of engaging with our unhoused population and making sure they're getting connected to services. And our police are out there in the community. People comment more. I think I saw, because you came down in the summer, and certainly that people were saying that and they were concerned about that. I saw a real turning point in December when I was downtown and I was talking with downtown business owners, and they were commenting at the noticeable police presence and how they saw our downtown policing unit out there and engaged. with residents and with downtown business owners. And they've taken a lot of proactive steps in making sure that crime is being reduced. Our CSI stats are being reduced. So we've done a lot of hard work over these past 4 years, and it's starting to really pay off.
Could you do more though?
Oh, of course, we can always be doing more. We can always be doing more. And that's something that we look at with the commission, looks at with Lethbridge Police Services in what are our next steps, right? We meet with them regularly to find out what are the resources that they need, what are our next steps. So certainly we do need to look at what we're going to do over the next 4 years. I certainly have some ideas about how I'd like our police services to be more supported. What more do they need? You know, the body worn cameras, our members of the police services are very happy to see coming on board because that will help them out with their jobs. Some of the areas we need to address in sort of the policing realm, so to speak, is our bylaw enforcement. What is that going to look like over the next 4 years? And right now, bylaw enforcement comes under the city. But how do we support that? How does police services support that? What does that look like, right? So that's a task we'll have to take on.
Well,
And
just on
yeah,
that note as well, because I can imagine there's sometimes, and I hate to paint a broad stroke, but I've done it 3 times on the interview already. But there are times when the police are called out that sometimes can be dealt with by a bylaw official or by a mental
Mhm.
health support service.
Yeah,
So supporting the police in the way that they need to be supported by giving them the resources and tools to actually be able to handle the calls that they're getting, because
yeah,
I'm hearing across Alberta that police are getting called for things that they are traditionally not equipped to do, but they're
yes,
needing
yeah.
to do it. So that also needs to come into factor in the next 4 years as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Right. It is having like we've had real conversations with them, but now it's time to grow into, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's what we always have to keep improving. Like that's just across the board.
So the last area I want to talk about before we turn to the future in the next 4 years is economic diversification. You've talked about it a few times already in the interview. Now, last time I checked, it's not like every counselor is going out and talking to the manager or the president of Pizza Hut or Amazon and saying, you need to come down here and help or build your facility in Lethbridge, Alberta. How do you see your role on council in the next 4 years in helping address the economic diversification and getting more investment into the community? Because you talk about the housing challenges, and it's that double-edged sword, right? You have to
Yeah.
have many different things up in the air. You have to be a juggler and a great juggler with 12 different balls in the air. How do you see your role as councillor in addressing the economic diversification aspect of Lethbridge over the next 4 years?
Well, and like you said, there's so many layers to that, right? There's housing, so we need to make sure that we've got the housing built. And I've heard from some businesses that they can't attract workers here because they don't have places to live.
Yeah.
So, it's we have to do that. We also have to make sure that we've got the employees here that investors want and our local businesses, like our current business infrastructure wants and needs, right? So we have to make sure that we've got those two layers taken care of. And then our investment strategy. So, what does a strategy look like insofar as attracting new investment here? So, we have started working on investment strategies for Lethbridge. We did pass an investment incentive to our city. So we've started getting that in place. But what other industries do we want to focus on investing to our city? But it's not just new investment, it's also growth because we have a lot of great local businesses here that are looking to expand and grow. So it's supporting them as well. My role in that I see is really supporting our economic development team in what they need. So, what do they need to get the work done that they're doing? How do I support economic development Lethbridge and the economic development team in giving them direction and having reporting back to us to see what they're doing insofar as making Lethbridge an attractive place to come and continue to invest and to come and invest. On top of that, it's also advocacy. So being out there and talking positively about our community. It breaks my heart when I hear somebody saying, "Oh, I was thinking of coming to Lethbridge," or "I was thinking of investing in Lethbridge," but when I Google you, it just comes up that it's an unsafe place to come, or it's an unsafe safe to invest. And it's no, we are a good opportunity. And we do have good opportunities here, right? Southern Alberta is a great place to grow your business, to locate your business, to invest. And we need to make sure we're talking positively about this city. So that's a message I'm also taking out to residents to say, look, we've got issues. We need to work on them. We've done some great work over these past 4 years. What do we need to do next? But let's talk positively so that we can do those next things while we're also addressing the issues that we've got to work on.
I feel
So I
like
think,
I feel
yeah.
like the people that choose Lethbridge and South Grow are going to be very happy with that last statement that you just made there. So,
You know what? I support our economic development teams. Like, we can't do work without them, right? And they are the experts in what we need them to be doing. I am definitely not an economic development expert, but what I can do is certainly champion the work they're doing, recognize the work they're doing, learn from them, and learn what they need me to be doing, right? And that's advocating for them and for this area.
so I want to turn to October 21st, the day after the election. You are officially the councillor re-elect for the city of Lethbridge. What would be priority number one for the councillor re-elect?
Well, we won't actually know until probably the Wednesday because of hand counting ballots. So there's going to be a
Okay,
little bit more time there.
okay. So
So it might be
October
Wednesday or
24th.
Thursday. Yeah, yeah. Let's go a little bit later during the week. I will have picked up my signs already, so that is the first priority is to go out and gather all that. Um, it's really just getting back to work. I mean, it's not getting back to work. It's getting to work on continuing what I'm doing, right? I know what my plan is. I know where I want to see our city moving, and it's going to be, okay, how do we work on that housing? How do we work on childcare and youth supports? How do we get more doctors here in Lethbridge? What do we need to do for zoning? Do we need to zone for more medical clinics? Do we need to zone for more housing? Like really keeping on track on what I've already been doing and moving that into the next 4 years.
So that's great. That's completely understandable. But you are one piece of the cog that is council. And I say the
Yep.
cog in the nicest way possible. Now, you don't get to choose your fellow councilors who sit around that table. And you don't get to choose who is going to be mayor or who is going to be the fellow councilors that you sit with. How do you see yourself? Because you would be potentially a person who has that past experience coming into that council, being that mentor to the next generation, to the next
Yep.
crop of municipal leaders who are going to be there. Because it could be the exact same council, or it can be a completely brand new council, and you might be the only new councilor there. So how do you see your role in ensuring that that teamwork that you have so much worked on over the last 4 years doesn't stop on the day the official results are announced? And I say the official date because we don't know when that's going to be right now. So, how do you see yourself in your role in ensuring that teamwork doesn't fall apart on day one and it still continues on?
It's as much as it's listening to residents, it's also listening to your fellow counselors and what they bring to the table. And understanding what our skill sets are going to be together, right? So it's sitting down and we've got a 90-day learning period that our clerk's office has done a fantastic job of laying out for us. So it's going to be building that team, understanding the strengths that everybody brings to the table, and what we need to be doing to work together as a new council.
And do you think you can do that in this
Oh,
hyper
absolutely.
political world that we live in?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I mean, I've always in our first interview when I first got elected to council, I told you that I'm happily politically agnostic, and I still maintain that happy political agnosticism, where I am certainly a bridge and relationship builder. That's what I do. And that's where I will always stay. I mean, I have never been affiliated with any political party and never intend to be. And that's what municipal politics is all about.
Good for you. One of the big items that you will be looking at in the first 90 days of council is the budget. And those are the
Yes.
things that are often the hardest to look at because they are the toughest to pass because things that are going on in the world right now. Now, I know work is already going on behind the scenes to get the budget prepared for when that is going to be passed later on this month. What would you like to see in the first budget of the next term of office?
Well, my focus on it is going to be, and we won't be doing a full budget review. It'll be,
Are you on a 4-year term?
yeah,
Really? I did not know
yeah,
that.
yeah. So it won't be a full
Mind
budget
blown
review.
on this show.
So it won't be a full budget review coming up, but there will be a budget review coming up in November. And we've just realigned our timelines on that to bring our infrastructure budget in line with our operations budget, because that was something council wanted to do because it just makes sense, right? So we're realigning that. We will be doing some budget review in November this year. But what I'm going to be looking at is where we're at, but then also making sure, just because of where we're at financially, is making sure that those critical infrastructure pieces are supported first. So that includes the critical infrastructure, but also the critical services. So our first responders, because those are the things we need to make sure we're funding first, and then looking at further out as to what those priority needs are throughout our city.
Now, we are heading into the closing few questions of the interview, and I just want to ask this question before we start wrapping up here, Jen. What haven't we talked about over the last 42 minutes now that you want to make sure people know about what you're going to be doing if you're elected, how you're going to be, how the last 4 years have been for yourself and your role on council over the last 4 years that you want to make sure people know about?
Um, I'm I'm going to be focused on what we need to be doing for the future of our city. So certainly listening to the immediate needs and working on those, but I'm also going to be looking further out. So where again do we want to be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years from now? So finding out and really getting that land banking strategy in place, building those regional relationships, and making sure that we're doing a good job there, as well as making sure that Lethbridge is a place that people are proud to call home. So really focusing on those things. That's what I'll be doing. I've learned a lot over these past 4 years, and you do learn a lot. When I start a new board, I'm probably not the most outspoken because I know that I've got a lot to learn. I think people are going to see a little bit more outspoken Jen in the next 4 years, so to speak.
Can I ask why? What changed over the last 4 years? Because I can't imagine you and I having that conversation back in 2022, 3, when we had the original first conversation between yourself and I. What's changed? Is it the way that you view the role of council, or is Jen just a different person from when she was first elected in 2021?
It's the way I view the role of counsel, and I'm a different and I'm a different person, right? So, like I said, I've learned a lot more now, and I've learned how the budget process works. I learned how to ask questions that I need to, and I've also got not a better view, but sort of a more full a more holistic view of what residents are expecting. So you come into council not completely understanding what the processes are and how they work, and now I feel like I've got a better handle on that. And it's yeah, that's the way I look at it, and that's
And I,
that's what I'm looking.
and I can say that I
And I
know
mean, I'm
some.
outspoken as it is, so it'll probably be just growing on that.
I know some council members and even mayors and reeves, not just in Alberta, but across Canada, who have been on council for about 15, 20 years, and they still don't know what the role of council is sometimes. So even after 1 year, you learning that, that makes me optimistic that we have you in the right position there, Jen. So before I let you go, I have two final questions, and this one's a sort of overarching one. And now you've already mentioned a few places where people can find you, and I will let people know that they can go to the show notes below and click on the links to Jen's website, social media pages, email address, so you can follow along on her campaign or reach out and get a hold of her. But
Yep.
my final question, and before I ask my final $1 million question, is how can people get involved? Because you have a very big city. You are not elected at districts. You are not elected at wards. You are at large counselor.
Mhm.
How can people get involved in your campaign, take a sign, reach out and ask the questions? You don't need to give the official details because those will be linked in, but tell us how we can reach out.
So different ways. You can volunteer. So certainly always looking for volunteers to help out in different capacities. So you can volunteer. You can donate. Running a campaign, the expenses have increased significantly since 2021. So you can donate. And people can. I've got a fundraising event running at a local coffee company. So Cuppers Coffee and Tea is selling Jen's Blend, the coffee you can count on. So people can purchase a bag of that coffee. $5 of every bag sold comes towards my campaign. And people can get out, take a look at my website and vote. Really get out and vote. That's the big thing.
So FYI, when I'm back down to Lethbridge, I need to go get a cup. Need to go get a bag of that coffee because anyone who says coffee and politics is like a special place in my heart. So
Right? I'm
my
making coffee and civic engagement easy.
two peas in a pod. So my
Exactly.
final question, and it's the $1 million question, and this is the point in time of the interview where I turn over the microphone to you for as little time or as long as time as you want to talk. And I've got a simple but overarching the big question. Why should people put their trust in you for another 4 years in office as their next city councillor for the great city of Lethbridge, Alberta?
I mean, for the past 4 years, I've been the voice of residents at the council table. I come prepared, I ask the hard questions, and I listen to our residents. Um, that's that's the biggest thing. I want to do what's right for this city. I want people to feel proud to call Lethbridge home. I want businesses to grow. I want residents to thrive. And I want to build this place into a future ready city where people want to come and people feel good about being here. And I will I will work hard to make sure all of that is going on. Um, you know, Really that's my vision, a place um, where every resident can thrive, where businesses can grow, and where families feel proud to call Lethbridge our home, and building a stronger, brighter Lethbridge together.
Jen, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show to talk about municipal politics. For a quick editorial note, for those who are running in Lethbridge and want to be featured on the show, you have to do a little bit of the work and reach out to us directly via our website or via social media, and we'll get back to you as quickly as possible and we'll get you on the show. We will be sending out emails to every single candidate running for mayor and council in the city of Lethbridge over the next few days as of this airing. Please get back to us. We'd love to have you on the show to talk about why you were running in this all important election. Jen, it is a pleasure always. Thank you so much for doing this.
And always a pleasure to chat, Chris. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Alberta Municipal Votes 2025 here on Municipal Affairs. Now, we hope you've enjoyed today's conversation, gained some valuable insights from today's candidate, but also this all important upcoming municipal election. Now, your support means the world to us, so share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, and help keep the conversation going. Quick editorial note before we leave. If you are a candidate running in this upcoming election and want to be featured on this show in any municipality, both urban and rural, reach out to us directly by visiting us online at crossbordernetwork.ca. There you'll be able to find some links, send in your information. We'll get back to you in a quick amount of time. So until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we will be back with a brand new episode of Alberta Municipal Votes 2025 here on Municipal Affairs shortly. Till then, everyone.